Welcome to episode 32 of the Hey You Guys podcast. As you can already tell, we haven't given you a quote because we've done a very special episode this week. We've teamed up with our friends at Sideboob Cinema to record Weekend at Bernie's 1 and Weekend at Bernie's 2. Yeah, it was very interesting to do, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. So we won't go too much into it at the moment, but without further ado, here is episode 32.
Welcome, everybody, to the New Flesh podcast. It's another Sideboob Cinema. It's a very special edition Sideboob Cinema. We are here. We are joined by our friends from over the pond, from the Hey You Guys podcast. How is everyone?
Good. Very good, thank you. And thank you so much for having us. This is awesome. Very exciting as well. Our first crossover podcast. This feels, it's like Marvel and DC almost.
Same with us.
Unbelievable.
First crossover.
Well, can we be Marvel at that point? Because I know more Marvel than DC, but no, really looking forward to this one. Really, as we've already alluded to, it's been months in the making. It's been one I've been looking forward to doing. So,
well, the films we're doing today are Weekend at Bernie's 1 and 2. I had heaps of fun rewatching these ones. I hope you guys did too.
Oh, well, Jesus Christ. Just to be clear, unlike you guys, you all seem to have a long history with these films. I've literally just watched them over the last few days for the first time. And man, to say I have very differing views of the two films would be a massive understatement. And, so, and the whole thing, coming into them, it's I don't know how I knew so little about Weekend at Bernie's. It's one of those films, it feels like it totally should have been on my radar. But instead, it's I didn't know who was in it. I didn't really know what the tone was. All I knew was what doing a Weekend at Bernie's is. That's it. I say that like I've done it in the past. Just to be clear, I've never done a Weekend at Bernie's.
But Liam, I think you've hit on something which maybe we'll get into a bit later. These movies are iconic, and like some of the other movies we cover and that you guys cover, I feel that some of the iconic elements have totally overshadowed the actual movie itself. Like the
100%.
Like think about it, like that baby blue jacket, the Lennon Sunnies, the smirk. But it's the premise. The premise is quite famous, but it's quite funny because you think of these two films, and as you just said, the premise which you get from number one, but a lot of the things you remember is from number two. Yeah, it's so true.
If I'm thinking of Weekend at Bernie's, I'm thinking of him dancing and things like that when he was on his own. That's all number two. The Voodoo Curse, which these two films are completely different.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. They really are.
Like I said, you think doing a Weekend at Bernie's, it's, as Liam has already said, he's probably kidnapped a corpse and done this over the weekend. But
have you guys not? Have you never been up? How many times I've been like, oh, dude, we've got to get into Tyler's party, and I'm I know, but they'll only let us into if Steve is with us, and Steve is dead. I'm like, oh, okay, dude, no, I've got a plan. I've got a plan. I haven't seen the movie, but I've heard about this movie. We can totally get in.
Well, before we take a deep dive on this film, maybe John, you can hit us with a bit of a synopsis. You set the table.
I'll set the table. Okay, strap yourselves in. Weekend at Bernie's, here we go. So, Richard and Larry, played by Jonathan Silverman and Andrew McCarthy, are two low-level schlubs who work at a New York insurance firm. Richard lives with his parents and Larry lives in a small roach-infested apartment. One burning hot weekend in the city, they work overtime and discover a massive financial oversight. The books are out $2 million. Basically, someone's trying to defraud the company. They excitedly take the news to their boss, Bernie Lomax, a Trumpian figure with a taste for fast cars and faster women. Bernie offers to go over the case in more detail over the Labor Day weekend, so he invites the boys to his plush house in the Hamptons. Turns out that Bernie is the one actually trying to screw the company. He meets with his mobster associates and asks that they kill Richard and Larry. Bernie's going to tie up the loose ends by writing a murder-suicide note and planning some money to take care of Richard and Larry. The mobsters agree to sick their best man, Paulie, on the case, and the head of the family, Vito, decides to kill Bernie, also because Bernie is nailing his girlfriend, Tina. Meanwhile, Richard has a disastrous date that's Jonathan Silverman, has a disastrous date with Gwen from work, summer intern. He gets caught out in a lie about living with his parents. Hitman Paulie arrives on the island in the Hamptons, surprising Bernie, and Paulie gives him a hot dose of heroin. Richard and Larry finally arrive themselves and head up to Bernie's beach house and discover that Bernie is dead. The pair want to do the right thing, but Bernie is a party magnet with something always getting in the way of them calling the authorities. Turns out intern Gwen is also a Hamptonite. Richard apologizes to Gwen, and they're back to square one as long as he doesn't lie to her anymore. The boys discover Bernie's plan to have them killed via recording, and they also find the evidence of the frame-up, the money and the note. Paulie, the hitman, convinced that he's blown the gig, returns again and again to finish the job. At the same time, Richard and Larry try to escape the island. Forced to return to Bernie's mansion, the boys return to Bernie's mansion. Gwen finally discovers the truth about Bernie. Paulie arrives to kill everyone. Larry and Bernie defeat Paulie. Richard and Larry win the day. What did we make of Weekend at Bernie's?
Well, first off, when you're reading that, I'm questioning it in my head. It's like, this is a comedy, right? Because there's some pretty dark shit in this film.
The comedy of errors is the hitman consistently killing a dead person.
Yes.
Like over and over, he's killing a dead person.
One of my favorite, actually, that's one of my favorite bits in the movie, because one of the jokes, I guess, is that guy losing his composure, and he rolls back, and then Bernie jumps down, like falls down off the balcony, and the guy's like wrestling with him, and the performance and the sound from the hitman's just great. He says like, "I got you, you son of a bitch, I got you," and he's like strangling a dead guy, and Bernie's doing that sort of hapless, like pathetic, like almost half fighting with him, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's one of the underrated aspects of this film is the physical comedy.
Yes.
Terry Kaiser as Bernie Lomax. Like, he's so good in this film. It's one of those ones easy to kind of write off. Oh, he's just playing a dead guy. They're kind of the same way you would say, oh, it's easy for Arnie to play, say, the Terminator because he's not doing anything. But I feel like you've got to have a certain skill set to pull that off. That whole, like, you're pretending to be dead, but at the same time, you can't quite act dead. You've got to kind of fall into certain positions while still maintaining the element that you're not in control of yourself. I don't know. I thought he was really good in this.
Well, Terry Kaiser, if you look at his sort of career, apparently he headed up some, pretty good acting school, and that makes perfect sense. I just knew that he was going to be like Henry Winkler from Barry, like or Jeffrey Tambor or someone. It's one of these like LA guys who is like really serious, and he's also Bernie.
Yeah. And sadly for him, he's mostly Bernie.
Can you imagine though him getting the script for this and go, "Well, I'm dead at the beginning of the film, but I'm through it all." Like, just imagine.
Well, no, that's very much the script for the second film, isn't it? At least
he gets half an hour.
A bit to do. Yeah.
Okay, he does get half an hour. You're right. I do apologize. I'm confusing the two films again.
I'm not sure if it's much better for him because Bernie's just the worst. I mean, he's so incompetent. It's unbelievable. It's like he wants to get killed or wants to get caught. I mean, he's talking about murdering them in like busy restaurants. What is this mob boss guy who's clearly pretty serious business? He's not only fucking his wife, but he's like cavorting with her outside of the place that they were all eating. I'm like, dude, man, it's like you want to get killed. Of course, which happens very soon.
But you can't feel for our hapless heroes either, because Andrew McCarthy is a scumbag in this film and in number 2.
Absolute scumbag.
He is a complete scumbag. Oh my God.
I've got this weird thing with it because I'm quite new to the world of Andrew McCarthy. And I kind of, he's also, I think he benefits from being maybe the nicest of a bunch of truly horrendous characters in St. Elmo's Fire. I watched that not too long ago, and that film, the main thing that stands out to me in that film is that everyone's a bellend. But I'm like, he's kind of the most likable of an otherwise horrendous cast. And in this, I'm like, there's got to be something to him because he is a terrible person, but I'm still kind of rooting for him. And I'm like, and I'm like, why wasn't Andrew McCarthy like a bigger star? I'm watching this and I'm almost like, he's got those connections with John Hughes from Pretty in Pink. And I feel like he could have been Ferris Bueller in another world. Like that's, when I'm watching this film, I feel like he's got that kind of vibe. And I'm asking myself, I'm like, oh, why didn't he have a bigger career? And then I watched Weekend at Bernie's 2. And I was like, oh yeah, that's why. Because
That's what I found. That's what I found the difference between the two movies. Like Weekend at Bernie's 1, I loved Andrew McCarthy's character. Like he was a scumbag, but I thought he was one of the best parts of the film. Like he was just a wonderful scumbag. But then Weekend at Bernie's 2, I felt like he was the worst thing about the movie.
Yes.
Like he was just too over the top, and he just he just looked weird, and it was just too much. And
he was gurning all the time. That weird laugh he kept bringing in. I was like, how have they turned what like? And as I said, I was watching these two films like within a couple of days of each other, and I came out of Weekend at Bernie. I was like, man, I like Larry so much, despite the fact that he's a dick. And then I watched Weekend at Bernie's too. I was like, that is one of the most unlikable movie performances I have ever seen. Well, it's insane.
I'm going to dissent. I'm going to dissent from you people. I loved him in number 2.
I thought this was all running so smoothly. First chink in the armor here, dude. First chink in the armor.
No, I agree, because I agree with what you're all saying. But at the same time, I thought that his second movie performance was a logical ramping of his first, and I can explain why.
Please.
Well, no, because the when you think about it, he has there's no deterrent. They've gotten away with so many crimes, and so in sort of a Dostoevsky way, he's become monstrous, and he's. I think in the second one, he's just like, a turned up to 11 version of the first movie, and I thought it was a very bold choice for them to have him. Well, I guess very early on he is jumping on the suitcase to try and get Bernie.
That's the best part of that second film. Yeah,
you said about monstrous, no more so than stuffing a dead body into a suitcase to take him on holiday.
Yes,
I mean, a big problem with this though is that there's such different movies, and like you said, I don't necessarily have an issue with the escalation of his character into, like, let's be clear, like, lunatic by the end of the second film. But because the second film is so much weaker than the first one, it's like, yeah, you can watch it as this kind of hijinks, well, quite a dark comedy. I mean, it's weird because it's actually quite well disguised as a dark comedy. It's actually something broader and more instantly likable than it really should be. You know, underneath, like, if you, like, when you're reading the synopsis, like, God, this sounds like a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. It's like, this could have just been Dogtooth again. But the second film, because they kind of remove the subtle social commentary which is underlying the film, there's nothing to kind of latch onto him as this likable character. It's like, you know, his actions are kind of like tonally and narratively they're kind of explainable by the social commentary underpinning the movie. So, like, the whole gap between the rich and the rest, and Richard and Larry taking these different approaches. Like, okay, Richard, I'm going to work hard because if I work hard enough, I'll get what I want. Whereas Larry's like, he thinks it's bullshit. So he's like, I'm going to take any opportunity to get to the top. I'm like, oh yeah, I can kind of get on board with that. And then his subsequent actions. And because they remove all that social commentary in the second film, I'm like, oh no, just Larry's just being an absolute psycho. And of course, they kind of upscale the hijinks unbelievably to the point where, as you already mentioned, he's stuffing a human body into a suitcase. And one of the most 90s things ever, like, you're watching this movie, and obviously everything going on is crazy. And all I kept thinking was, how the hell did they get a dead body through security?
That's what I was thinking.
I know
too.
it's an internal point, but Jesus.
They said it, didn't they? It's no customs because it is classed as America. So apparently it's just easy to do it if you're going between states.
Oh, apparently so.
Well, okay. So you've mentioned a lot there, Liam. I think maybe we'll stick macro for a bit and talk about, particularly the first movie. And let's talk about these big themes that you mentioned there. You mentioned, the satire. You mentioned, like, what it's about. Maybe we could talk about what the hell we think it's about, or the genre. But the basic fact is that lots of people like this movie, despite the bad press, despite the second movie, despite everything. This was a big-titted hit. This was made for like 15 million or something, and it made like 30 or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, and then it spawned a sequel. And, like, I think you look at those numbers because we tend to focus on those old those box office numbers, but also the ancillary market, the video sales of both of these and the cable sales and everything would have been huge. So I think this did well enough that people are suing each other behind the scenes, like Ted Kotcheff and the writer. What's his name? Robert Klein. Sorry, they're both suing, someone because it made so much money. That's always a good sign.
Well, because it's just like, if we are just talking exclusively about the first one in particular, it's because the first one's really good. It's really, like, And again, we come back to Larry, and I think less so with Richard, who I actually think has a bit of a kind of Ross from Friends vibe, where he, on the surface he's trying to do the right thing, but he really is actually a bit of a dick. But fundamentally, it's like the first film is well made, it's funny, with a really likable cast of characters. And, it's no surprise. I mean, Ted Kotcheff, you already mentioned the director. I mean, this guy's got chops. This guy directed, First Blood. That's an absolutely amazing film.
Well, he actually directed one of Australia's greatest ever movies, which is Wake and Fright. If you've never seen Wake and Fright, you've got to see it. It spawned the Australian film renaissance of the 1970s.
Well, I think you can go bigger and say, I tell people it's the greatest Australian movie ever made.
That was Donald Pleasance.
Yes.
That's right, yeah.
So, it takes an outsider. It takes someone, I think he's from Canada, it takes an outsider to see, to bring something new to just make you see yourself in a way. And I think that, I watched that movie. It's too close to home. Do you know what I mean? You watch it and I just get chills. I just go, oh my God, he's nailed us. And that was from 1971, but a lot of that stuff is still true.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, as you're saying, Ted Kotcheff, he's the real deal.
It really is.
Well, you say that. I mean, he went from that to do The Shooter with Dolph Lundgren, which, okay.
Oh well, they can't all be bullseyes. Did you not hear all this stuff about Australia? I mean, Jesus Christ, give the guy a break.
Well, speaking of bad reviews, let's. I do want to explore some of the deeper themes here, but I want to take Roger Ebert to task here for a second, okay? So I think it's fair to say we've got a love-hate relationship with this guy on our podcast. And I got a bone to pick with this.
He's a mixed bag.
I've got a bone to pick with this guy, okay? So Roger Ebert, in his 1989 review of Weekend at Bernie's, criticizes the film because, quote, the comedy requires the other characters to be so stupid as not to notice Bernie is dead. Okay, so... my question is, what if this is the point of the film? So Larry and Rich,
I agree.
Larry and Rich are too innocent and dumb to be accused of Bernie's murder. Bernie himself can't be viewed as a victim, or at least as an audience member. We don't give him any sympathy for being killed. So instead, the social criticism of the film is aimed squarely at the Hamptons crowd, whose, their self-indulgences and self-obsessions make them oblivious to Bernie's situation. And like you said, Astro, money doesn't lie. The film was successful. It made a shit ton of money. And in the film, neighbors come and go from Bernie's house. They drink his alcohol. They borrow his boat. They mooch off him left and right. And implied in all of this is that Bernie is one of those people and would act in exactly the same way. He'd be equally unaware of the neighbors, if his neighbor had died next door, So it's unlikely that the intended audience for Weekend at Bernie's are Chardonnay-sipping elites that spend their summers in the Hamptons, or write film columns for the Chicago Sun-Times, So the intended audience for this film are people that identify with Larry and Rich.
100%.
Well, he sort of put that, but they put you can hear all the interactions at the party. They're talking about book reviews and cars and plays and Harvard, and he sort of put the critics in the movie to a certain degree. Like he's got some, like if you listen to ADR in the background and stuff, they're talking about, there's these sort of posh reviewers talking about theatre and whatnot. And so, I think that's very much this movie is a movie of the people.
And it's one of those films like the best of their kind. Like it gets to, have its cake and eat it, as it were, because it works on both ends of the spectrum. It's like, if you want to just watch it and be like, oh, they get away with this because, as you say, Richard and Larry are dumb. You can watch it at that surface level and just enjoy it for what it is. But if you want to, as you say, dig a little deeper, if you want to question why the rich and famous aren't, noticing the fact that Bernie's clearly dead, it does come back to that critique on the fact of, the self-absorbed nature of the rich and famous of the US in the 80s. So, yeah, it's surprising maybe that he didn't see it for what it was. But I think a lot of people probably are happy to watch that film and wistfully kind of ignore the social commentary that's going on below the surface and just kind of enjoy Larry and Richard's hijinks.
Do you think we like them because they're middle class and they have ambition and they're working, at the beginning they're working overtime and they're trying to get ahead in this me generation. They're sort of fighting against this. Do you think that like is one of the drivers of why we like them?
For sure, yeah. The way the film opens with them, going to work on a really hot summer's day in New York and they look tired, but they're still pushing on.
It wasn't it a Sunday?
Yeah. So on the weekend, Saturday or
Don't
Sunday.
Don't they have a weekend at Bernie's? So does a whole week go by?
The mass.
They get a day at Bernie's, don't they?
Because it's a Labor Day weekend.
But he says come to the week to know.
I reckon you're right, Astro.
Right. Okay.
I think you're right.
Is there like a 2.5 hour cut of this film?
The first day he goes there, he gets killed, and then it's another day after that because. But is it on a Friday? Night there, isn't it?
Is that what we're saying? Because he's going to go.
I don't know.
I'm just trying to get the chronology straight. I know it's important for this movie.
I got to be honest with you guys. I am absolutely sticking with my theory of the 2.5 hour weekend at Bernie's cut. Where it's basically fundamentally the same film, but after they come in on the Sunday, there's just like 45 minutes of them just having a standard working week before the following actual weekend.
Yeah.
And, it went to test audiences. We're just not sure about this 45-minute section of them just working for a solid, Monday to Friday, which is
it does make sense, though, because we've got to have the date with Gwen. We've got to have the meeting with Vito and the mobsters, and there's a lot to get out of the way before we set the table.
Well, you as well. I mean, how long was he playing Monopoly for before we just kind of catch him in the middle of a game, Larry?
Yeah, those Monopoly games can go for hours.
They can, and that was again one of the more questionable moments of the film because all the way through this, the justification, I guess, for them, they don't want anyone to find out that Bernie's dead is because they want the party to keep going. Obviously, Richard wants to get into Gwen's lady garments, whatever. And Larry, I assume, just wants to keep living the lifestyle. So they're pretending Bernie's dead. And I assume that Larry's like, oh, well, I'm going to live this party lifestyle. And the first thing they cut to is him playing Monopoly on his own. I'm like, I don't think this guy has much imagination. I mean, Jesus Christ. You're in the Hamptons and that's, you've gone to all this effort to get there. And the first thing you do is play a single-player version of Monopoly. Oh, Jesus Christ, dude.
I'm so surprised as well how quick he goes from, ooh, there's a dead body to, oh, let's keep him around for a weekend.
Yeah.
Like in mind, it's just like, let's not call it like his mind just goes so quickly to, oh, we'll keep him as a puppet for a weekend.
And I like that he smells so like in the second film, like half an hour into it. That's when he starts to smell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some question marks here over decomposition. I mean, I'm not a scientist, just to be clear.
Again,
I'm suggesting that by the end of this film, he should be in a slightly worse state than he is.
Yeah, I know we're not covering number 2 just yet, but there's a question about rigor mortis as well and suitcases and everything that we can... but yeah.
Well, there's so much about death that they're not covering. I mean, I'm pretty sure of whatever's in you comes out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That
would ruin the movie. Like if it was like people were like, oh my God.
Yeah, and all right, and again, I've only seen this film once recently. Is it clearly implied that what's her name? Catherine Parks as Tina has sex with the corpse?
That's what I was going. Yes. Speaking of rigor mortis, when she comes down the stairs, he's never been better.
That's right.
Well, I love that scene because it's left to our imagination. We don't see what happens in there. We just have to imagine what's going on.
In fairness, I think if we did see what was going on there, it might have changed the ratings.
I think so,
quite considerably.
Yeah.
I have a question here, and since we are from we're all in the Commonwealth, but we have slightly. I want to get cultural for a second. Now, what do you guys think? I think this movie is about a vacation movie, Now, I've look, and maybe our American listeners can let us know, however they like to about this. But when I went to America not too long ago, just prior to COVID, did a bit of a trip of America, and they get a glint in their eye when they say this word vacation. We don't have this word vacation. Like they kept saying, like we were on a big trip, like and they didn't. A lot of the people we deal with didn't really understand. They're like, "Oh, how long's your trip?" And we're like, "Oh, we're away for 6 weeks." And they were sort of like, they didn't understand like how that was even possible. And because we're not rich, you know what I mean? We're just going on a bit of a trip. And then they're like, "Oh, so you're on vacation?" And then we'd go, "Oh no, just off work, just." Off work, like just on a bit of a holiday, and they're but they'd go, "Yeah, vacation." Like they'd sort of change their voice to Elizabeth Holmes sort of voice, vacation, and like,
oh, you're going on vacation.
Like, what does this word mean? I think it. So from the Welsh perspective as well, what's your deal with holidays and vacation? Because this movie is for people like a lot of Americans who don't get the chance to get away.
Yeah, you have two separate things. So you have like the weekend away. We're just going to go away for a weekend. And then you have a holiday. We're just going to go on holiday 2 weeks, 10 days, 7 days, whatever it is. But yeah, vacation is an odd one. I don't see that as just really excited. That word vacation is just,
think about it.
Never understood it.
They've made movies about it. Like it's a word.
Yeah.
It's so charged, and you're just like, oh no, we're just sort of having a bit of time off,
Yeah,
but it's the same, isn't it? Because they call it Christmas vacation as well. So
no, I totally agree. I feel like there is a different vibe to it. It's hard to kind of pin down, I think, but it feels like there is a difference between holiday and vacation, and maybe it is their relationship with holidays or vacations. Because obviously in America, I think it's almost seen as maybe a negative sometimes to go on holiday. They have like that different work ethic. Almost it's like, it seems to be celebrated if you work yourself into the ground. Whereas we're like, dude, that sounds fucking mental. It's like, if you've got holidays, you take every single day of that holiday, but they don't. And I don't know, like they have that big attachment to it. As you say, like the whole like vacation movie series. I don't know. Is it just implied perhaps that by calling it vacation, that hijinks ensue? Because, there's the vacation series. Would it be the same if they just called this movie, holiday? I don't know. It doesn't have the same ring to it, does it?
We get annual leave, don't we? We get actual hours over here, but I don't think a lot of Americans do. They don't get paid holiday leave. So if it's something that they get to go on, and I realize this movie podcast is doing very
factual,
very political. Yeah, very factual. Yeah,
I've opened up. I've said they can, let us know. We don't know anything. I don't know anything about America.
But I wonder if they don't get the holiday hours. So they lose money whilst being on vacation. I mean, that's why it's more important for them, I suppose is the best way to say.
Yeah, I think it's all wrapped up in their work situation and their work ethic as well. I think that the majority of Americans probably can't afford to go on vacation.
Yeah, it's a luxury.
So vacation movies are a bit more attractive.
But this movie, because the reason these movies exist, and this movie exists, is because of the extremism of America, which we all love. We love their extremism. We love that, if you live in New York, you have to live in a roach-infested apartment, or you live in Trump Tower. Nothing in between.
No, I think you're right, and I don't think this movie necessarily works in the UK, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but possibly in Australia too, because we're not talking about two like schlubs. I mean, these are white-collar workers working in New York City. It's like over here, if you had the same film and it's two white-collar workers working for an insurance firm in London, and the whole film is about them not being able to afford really going on holiday, you'd be like, well, that's fucking bullshit. Of course they can. They're white-collar workers from London. But in America, they and again, very much from an 80s perspective, that, Regan era, Bush Sr. and all that jazz, is that there was that disconnect. The wealthy were so wealthy, and everyone else was just doing their damnedest to kind of catch up. And that is partly about, I think I mentioned it earlier, about their two different approaches to the same goal, essentially. Both are so desperate to get to the top. And Richard's taking the traditional American approach, and Larry's taking the I will do anything. And, often because he's just lazier, I suppose. He's just like, I just want to get to the top, but I don't have to do all the hard work. Whereas Richard wants to do the hard work because he thinks that's the American narrative. But, again, this film is at least partly about the do's and the haves and have-nots. I'll learn to speak eventually. And, again, it feels very American in that regard.
I do love how you said, though, that it wouldn't work over here in London because they can't go on holiday. Nothing to do with the fact that that we'd catch them out by moving a dead body. It's the fact that we don't believe that they could afford the holiday hours over here.
That's so true. It's so damning.
Your entire 5-minute process then was, no. If they're over in London, it's because, we won't believe it because they can't afford a holiday. Not the fact that they're cat and a dead body wrong, which is the major premise of this film.
Yeah. Well, that's the magic of this film, really, isn't it? It just shifts your focus.
But look, Ricky, maybe you can speak to this. But what is the deal with why have they? Because it makes sense in the sequel, but why have they gone with such an aggressive calypso theme in this first movie?
We did talk about this off air. I don't know. I guess it's that exotic vacation vibe. It speaks to. I mean, there's a whole genre of music that deals with this called exotica music, which is all about. Now, exotica music was a style of music that existed sort of pre-Beatles, 1950s, and it was basically fake world music that you were supposed to put on as you were lounging by your suburban pool, and it was supposed to transport you to Tahiti or exotic places in the South Pacific, and yeah, it was very escapist. So I think that's injected itself into American culture at large, where any sort of vacation is underscored with exotic world music. So you get a lot of calypso music in this film, and even more so in Weekend at Bernie's 2, because they actually go to the American Virgin Islands, but. Also, you've got Andy Summers, who is a member of the Police, who are famous for kind of ripping off Jamaican and calypso grooves in their music. So,
can you do that now? Can you just go now? Like, if I was like, "Here's my band now," and I was just doing the Police. If I was just like doing, how they just because they do fake Jamaican accents, right?
Yeah, they do.
yeah, that's not happening.
That's not happening now.
It's
no.
not happening.
Well, you would need a token person of color.
I couldn't just go, walk the streets for money.
Yeah, walking on the moon,
on the moon, like kind of, and then like I play it for the exec, and they just go, okay, and then they just immediately call the Hollywood Reporter, and I'm cancelled. Done.
Yeah.
Yes, I liked how this is going, but I did notice that a lot of you are very white. So, we're not sure if this is going to work out, guys, to be honest. Well, I mean, we live in a world where a girl gets absolutely slaughtered for wearing a kimono to a prom. So I'm thinking, us kind of showing up as a group, all speaking or singing in Jamaican accents and being like, listen, is this going to work? I'm going to shoot.
But this movie is all about it. Like it's we've got Hot and Cold by Jermaine Stewart, and then what's the other one? The other one's called Island Girl, Burning Flames, and then the entire score. So they would see it was just a difference in perspective. In the 80s, they had the view that, and I'm not saying this is 100% correct, but they did have the view of, we live in this one world, and we should share cultures, and we should explore different cultures and amplify different cultures in the best way, in the only way we can. And sometimes, you get deeply offensive stuff, and then other times we get Graceland. We get like amazing stuff. And nowadays, we wouldn't. That's the thing. So now they go, okay, stay in your lane, and I wouldn't be able to do my calypso band, which is that's a shame.
Which is a crime.
But by the same token, what the people ideologues who believe that are happy with is they're happy with no Graceland. They're happy with that Paul Simon album, Graceland, one of the greatest world music albums ever. They'd be happy for that not to exist. Do you know what I mean?
And no Peter Gabriel as well.
No Peter Gabriel. Oh yeah, Peter Gabriel. What does he know? I mean, he's obviously a racist, right? And you go, well, I don't know. He's being pretty respectful and amazing at the same time.
Yeah, well, it's just the way the world. It's such a shame that we have to kind of appeal to the lowest common denominator. It's like everyone, instead of, like you say, using the Graceland example, nowadays the standard would be to use the horrendously racist example at the other end of the spectrum of why we can't have this, rather than you going, but look, when it works, it can be amazing. But everyone would be like, yeah, but when it goes wrong, dude, it's pretty fucking rough. So. It's a shame that the conversation has moved to that side of the fence.
And since we're in this area, I'm not saying that when Larry, finds the note and it says, Richard Parker and I stole this money from the company to pay for my sex change operation. And then afterwards he says, not only is he doing blah, 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 but he's turning me into a drag queen.
Yep.
I'm not saying that's good, I'm just saying that.
But is it? I don't know if it's that big a deal. And sorry, it was just you saying his full name. Did anyone else have an issue? Have any of you guys seen Life of Pi?
No.
The movie. I know this is a shift in conversation, a pretty dramatic turn to the right. But there's a character in that. But the tiger in the film is called Richard Parker as well. So all I can hear is that Indian accent over and over again. Oh, Richard Parker! He's always shouting for this.
So how come
this tiger?
It's offensive for me to do the Jamaican thing and then you just did Indian?
But I mean, yes, is that offensive? It's weird.
Well,
I was trying to explain this to a friend recently. It seems to be certain accents are acceptable.
No. The rule is simple. The rule is simple. It's you're only allowed to be, if you want to do a Russian accent, you can be the most offensive. You can just talk about the Kremlin, how you're going to kill everyone. You can just be the worst guy ever, or probably South African as well. And that's from the old days.
Yeah.
And now, but if you do anything else, then it's beyond the pale.
But you're telling me I can't do my Jamaican accents whenever I want. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I want people to understand that.
Absolutely rats.
I love it. See, that's the thing. I want people to understand it's a wicked accent, and that's why I desperately kind of wish I had that Jamaican accent a bit.
Do you?
I mean, it would be so much fun to just speak in a Jamaican accent.
Please,
and
from now on, Sideboob Cinema would be such a great podcast. Just Jamaican for all.
Hey, don't you guys in the UK have something called Jafaican? A Jafaican accent?
Jafaican?
Yeah.
I'm not aware of Jafaican.
No, I
thought that was sounds like something I would love.
Yeah, I need to check this out.
But isn't this like an affected accent?
It's a London. It's London
so.
English, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah. Jafaican is the London English. Yeah. So it's just doing a quick Google now. Multicultural London English is a socialite of English that emerged in the late 20th century. So it's basically all the people that came over from Jamaica, and we've just carried it on. By the sounds of it, in some of the London
see,
suburbs.
the problem with that is that any attempt to do that suggests it would take some kind of subtlety. My impressions are pretty broad. It's just going to be Jamaica. I'm not going to be doing London, Jamaica. Just vaguely Jamaica.
So AJ, do you think maybe I should start doing the Jamaican accent?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, good.
I think lean in.
What you mean? You mean indefinitely and
welcome to Sideboob Cinema. And when you do that voice, I just did this. I was sort of like jumping up and down a little bit, like sort of like I was gave me a lot of energy. So I think it could really work out. That's what I'm saying.
I think we'd be up for a good time.
Yeah, no, I think. Yeah, I think certain accents, you just kind of naturally change your style. I'm pretty sure whenever I do a South African accent, I immediately just look meaner. I think it's just a thing I do. I just associate with them. I'm just like, well, it's just in my head, like, we live across the other side of the world. So my association with South Africans is that they're just all villains in movies.
That's right.
Like, that's it.
I was waiting for that. Yeah. So, yeah, basically Lethal Weapon 2.
And Hard Target.
Yeah.
Hard Target. Arnold Vosloo.
Hard Target, yeah.
So I have the issue now that, my way into a South African accent is totally associated now with District 9. So I've got to start every sentence with prawn. I've got to say prawn before I can say anything else. It's a very strange thing. I think everyone has their own way into terrible accents. So yeah. Mine is prawns. Very odd.
Well, we probably should start bringing in number 2, perhaps.
Please.
Oh, yeah. This feels like the perfect time.
Are there any bits and pieces from this first one that anyone wants to remember? Just throw in there quickly.
I want to talk about one of my favorite parts of the first movie is the kid.
I knew the kid was going to come up.
Yes, I love a shitbag kid that pulls the finger, that swears. When he starts burying Bernie for the second time at the end of the film.
Okay, Ricky,
I just lost it. I loved it.
Okay, so the kid raises them up and runs away, and then he turns back to them, Larry and Richard. He goes, how'd you like to kiss this? And then he points to his butt. And then Larry goes, kiss my ass.
Doesn't he say as well? Like, it gets pretty dark very quick. I'm pretty sure he says, I'm going to rip your gums out.
Yes.
I was like, God damn. That's pretty messed up. I mean, don't get me wrong, that kid is clearly a terror, but I'm not sure that would be my opening response to an 8-year-old.
I wanted to mention, now this is, this might even be inappropriate because, we all don't know each other very well, but I think that with Bernie and Tina, like chicks grabbing crankshafts and the guy going, oh, like, that'll always be funny. I
agree.
I agree.
Think like, what the hell is that? It's something that like she's going straight for it, and she uses her foot and really smushes in there.
Yeah,
AJ, did you notice?
Of course, I noticed. Frank loved it.
It's so good, but like it's something about a woman like just like moving too fast, moving too fast, and the guy going like,
especially when a dude's sitting next to her.
I wasn't prepared for this.
That's rock and roll.
Just quickly before we move on, I've got a little bit of trivia on the first film here.
Okay.
The only thing I wanted to mention, sorry, before we go on to the trivia about the first one was how hot must it be in New York to melt the tar on the roof?
I really felt hot from watching it.
Yeah, I really did. I thought they really sold it to me. I was like, God, that looks so uncomfortable.
I've never come across just a hot day that has melted the road.
Well, actually, that sometimes happens in Australia where you have to shut down. You have to shut down the trains because the train tracks and the surrounding kind of bitumen melts. Yeah.
Oh, that's my Welsh head where it just there's nothing but rain over here. Then that's
yeah. We're living in a world where it's like it's 27 degrees and we all start just kind of passing out immediately. I was like, you're talking to Australians who, I mean, I've run the numbers. How many miles is it you live from the sun? Like 7 or 8? It's a ridiculous country. I mean, some of the temperatures you guys have to deal with are outrageous. Again, very quick. Sorry, you guys have this obviously much longer history with the film growing up with it. Like, what is the view on Catherine Mary Stewart, Gwen Storm? Is it Gwen Saunders, the character? It's did everyone have a crush on her growing up?
Yeah, well, I didn't really know her very well, but I must say, just as a bit of she's also in another movie we've watched called The Beach Girls. So. She plays one of the beach bunnies in that movie, but she seemed just like a wasp, sort of like one of these 80s, sort of sweater over the shoulder wasp chicks, that like.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Like watching it, like when I was growing up, I think of like a lot of the kind of crushes I had were like Phoebe Cates, Elizabeth Shue, people like that.
I'm still waiting for Rebecca De Mornay to come over to my house with the wind machine blowing. Like I want that. That's what I want.
The only thing I remember Catherine Mary Stewart from, which I actually enjoyed her in, was The Last Starfighter. That was the one for me. Yeah, she was great.
So believe it or not, the scene when Bernie is water skiing, that is not a dummy body. That is a stuntman. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Now a stuntman, he broke several ribs when filming that scene. Okay. And my question is, couldn't they have used a mannequin of some sort? Like that just seems fucking crazy to me.
Well, I think the answer to that is almost immediately responsive. Like Weekend at Bernie's too. They go the full mannequin route. And of course they have to for certain circumstances, i.e. the fridge and the suitcase. But it's another one of those things that I think makes the second film look quite shonky by comparison. It's just like, it's so clearly a mannequin. But, they go that extra mile in the first film,
for sure.
And I think it makes a difference.
They grab a stunt double to play dead whilst dragging him along the water. I mean, I do agree. Maybe a mannequin might have been a bit better.
Yeah. For sure.
I don't know. I think it's the little details which elevate this film. This is a Ted Kotcheff film.
So you're
He's
saying
not fucking around.
You're saying broken ribs worth it? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And I might have felt differently, as I said, if I hadn't just watched Weekend at Bernie's 2, with all those terrible, like with the bits with like the when he's on the like he's pretending to be a horse or whatever it is, and you can just totally see that it's it's just the worst.
Weekend at Bernie's 2 is knocking at the door. Ricky, come on.
It is. Just let it in. Just let it in.
So, two men once pulled a real-life Weekend at Bernie's and were arrested for abusing a corpse. In 2011, Robert Young and Mark Robinson found their friend Jeffrey Jarrett unresponsive at his home. Instead of calling 911, they took him out for a night of fun, all paid for with Jarrett's credit card, including visiting a strip club where they used Jarrett's card to take out $400 from the ATM. So they swore that they didn't know their friend was dead at the time, but they both pled guilty and were each given 2 years of probation as well as community service. So that seems like a very small sentence for such a irresponsible thing to do. Like he could have still been alive when they first found him. Like call 911.
Mm-hmm. Do you think maybe they got away with, like, do you think the sentence was reduced just for the sheer ambition of it?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, don't get me wrong, they've broken a lot of laws, but I mean, fair play to those guys. I can't believe they went through it.
The judge must have been a Weekend at Bernie's fan.
The major question about all of that is, how did they get his PIN number?
I don't know.
Like they took money out of the ATM.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point. We clearly haven't got all the details here.
Maybe they just fudged it. They just went, what's his... We know his birth date. It must be that.
Or it's
they just lucked out.
6969, like at my dad's.
Oh my God. I mean, it's a ballsy move, I'd be able to give like your own PIN number away online, but to just randomly give away other people's PIN. Yeah,
I love the pride that your dad probably said now.
I love that.
Like, what my PIN number is.
He probably winks at you every time he puts the number in.
He loves it.
You have to. like you're at a cash machine and most people are like pretty careful about making sure people behind can't see, where I'd just be like clearly standing out the way. I like making full eye contact as I put in 6, 9, 6, 9. Really slowly, really intently. I'd get robbed blind in no time, but I feel like it'd be worth it just for that.
All right, shall we do Weekend at Bernie's 2?
Hit me.
Oh, please.
Okay, the boys are back. Larry and Rich pick up where they left off, only this time with loads of fake tan. The film opens with the boys making a positive identification of Bernie's body at a downtown New York City morgue. Larry claims to be Bernie's nephew so that he can get some of Bernie's possessions, including his Rolex watch and his credit cards. Later that day at the insurance company, Larry and Rich are quizzed by their bosses and an internal investigator about the whereabouts of the missing $2 million. They deny knowing where the money is. Their boss, not believing a word they say, promptly fire the two and sends the investigator, Arthur Hummel, played by Barry Bostwick, off to prove their guilt. Meanwhile, in the Virgin Islands, a voodoo queen named Mobu is hired by mobsters to find the $2 million that Bernie stole. She sends two servants, Harry and Charles, played by Steve James and Tom Wright, to New York to get Bernie's body, perform a voodoo ceremony to reanimate him, and bring him back to her so he can lead her to the money. Their attempts to bring Bernie back to life are plagued by accidents. They prepare the ceremony, but having lost the sacrificial chicken, use a pigeon instead. This somehow limits Bernie's ability to walk towards the hidden money. He can only move when he hears music. A great way for the filmmakers to inject a shitload of Caribbean-flavoured music into the film. Harry and Charles later lose Bernie on the subway. Over dinner, Larry reveals to Rich that he has a key to a safety deposit box located in St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands. Larry convinces Rich to borrow Bernie to gain access to the safety deposit box. The two find Bernie, and after stuffing him in a small suitcase, they leave for the Virgin Islands. The guys successfully use Bernie to open his safety deposit box, but find no money. Instead, they find a handwritten map. Meanwhile, Larry befriends a lovely local girl named Claudia, played by Troy Bayer, and enlists her help in making sense of the map, which she takes possession of to show her father. Later, Larry and Rich are captured by Henry and Charles, who take them to Mobu, the voodoo queen. They force Rich to drink a poisonous potion and tells him that they must find the map by sundown to get the antidote. After being reunited with Claudia, they are shocked to discover that Bernie is moving and realize he's leading them towards the 2 million. To keep him moving, they put a Walkman with headphones on his head. Bernie finds a large chest in the ocean, but he does not let go of it. They end up attaching Bernie to a horse carriage with music playing. After some terrifying out-of-control moments, eventually the carriage ends up at Mobu's place. Bernie hits a large tree branch and spins out of control, knocking out Mobu and dropping the chest, which breaks open onto the ground. Larry hides some of the money and gives the remaining amount to Hummel, the investigator. With Mobu knocked out, Claudia's father, a medical doctor familiar with voodoo, says that he can cure Rich if he can get the blood of a virgin, which Larry confesses he can provide. The mobsters and Mobu are arrested. Larry confesses to Rich that he returned the 2 million to the insurance company, but only after learning Bernie actually stole 3 million. Larry and Richard use some of the remaining million to purchase a yacht crewed by smoking hot blondes. Meanwhile, Bernie is last seen leading Henry and Charles, who have been transformed into goats by voodoo, through a carnival parade to an unknown fate. Hey, you guys are what the fuck? This movie...
Honestly, I mean... The first thing to say about this is it's really good to see that the Matrix Reloaded got the idea from the rave scene from this. Like, when Henry and Charles are rocking up, I could have sworn that they were in, what was the Zion, I think it's called?
Zion, yeah.
It's Zion, yeah. It's ridiculous.
In their weird underground orgy dance. Yeah, it's pretty bizarre scene in fairness.
Well, this film is so much, it's much more cartoony than the first one, and it even the movie even opens with the opening credits is a cartoon of them.
I knew I'd hate it straight away. Like, as soon as I saw that horrible intro sequence, it reminded me. Remember City Slickers? It had a very similar intro. It seemed to be a thing in the early 90s, and I never liked them. No. And this one is a really bad one. Yeah. And like you say, it immediately gives you the vibe that this is going to be a much cartoonish take on, a pretty cartoonish premise. But they tried, at least in the first one, to kind of, give you an excuse for these things happening. It's like, Richard always is like, I'm not into this anymore, and then Gwen keeps showing up. They just abandon all that. And to my mind, what it reminded me of is, remember all those like films from the 80s, like, RoboCop, Beetlejuice? They all ended up with their own, like, usually ill-advised cartoon shows, which would kind of sit alongside them. It felt like they had a script for a cartoon, like a Saturday morning thing, and then they just turned it into a movie instead. It's so bizarre.
It did seem like a pitch for that series, like an animated series.
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened.
Well, what he said about that he was a virgin at the end, because he made a joke in the first one about Larry made a joke in the first after she came down from the old rigor mortis sex. Larry made a joke of, if I lie there, I get in trouble. Like, why would he make that joke?
He's a liar.
Yeah, I know he's a liar, but he's making himself seem bad by saying that. So he's pretending that he's not a virgin in the first one by making him sound like he's a shit lover.
But we've discussed that Larry is a terrible human being, and he is off the chain in this movie. His language is much more callous and crude as well. Like, he says, like in this one, he just says straight up, like, you don't hear this in movies anymore.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
You know what I'm going to say. He says, oh my God, look at the tits on that one. The tits on that one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that is crazy.
And Richard, as soon as he hears that, he's like, he's trying to be all business. As soon as he hears that, no, I'll abandon everything I'm going to do to come out and stare as well. It's yeah.
He actually has a few lines which I like. That was like the top one down, but it was like really in the film, like early in the film, he says, "Oh yeah, he was really raping the company right under your nose." I was like, God,
that was my second quote I was going to mention. He's really raping the company. He also disrespects other cultures. He just totally doesn't care about the voodoo. Like, he's just like picking up the stuff and saying, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and it's always followed by that weird, goofy laugh, which wasn't really present in the first film. And I think you mentioned it earlier. Somehow they've made him look weird. It's hard to kind of put my finger on it. but he just looks weird in this film.
Well, first of all, it's the fake tan, but I think also it's the 4 years between the first one. They just don't look. They've aged.
Yeah, like I think he was like pushing the boundary, but he definitely had that kind of like fresh face thing going on in the first one. Like he still very much felt like the Rat Pack kid kind of thing. But in this film, like at somewhere in between 1989 and 1993 or whatever it was, he just very much became an adult. But he's still trying to play off that he's that fresh-faced kid. And I think the fact, you mentioned the fact that he's so much more crass, it feels even worse coming from what appears to be a full-grown adult. And it's just, I just don't think any of it works. Although it does lead to the line, swim with the fishes, you zombie bastard. So I'm willing to give him a free pass up to a certain point. So,
Of all the things in this film that make him just an insane person, we've already said, like an awful person, it's the fact that he eats crisps or potato chips out of the fridge.
Oh.
What
the fuck are they doing in the fridge?
Oh my god!
And,
you absolute animal! Like you cold potato chips or crisps, as we call them.
Well, add that to the list, though. He commits fraud. He forges. He steals, and he's frankly building up to a rape.
He's clearly. I mean, I get the impression that if he was more physically imposing, I think rape would have occurred. I mean, it was going down that route, wasn't it?
AJ, what do you think of his sex pest lies?
Oh,
like he said the old. What about the old?
Oh, you sound so sad, and rightly so.
What about the old? Paying and hashtag complicit. The taxi driver is involved in the sexual crime.
He wanted that extra 20.
Yeah. So he's like, to take off down the road because this is Harvey Weinstein stuff. It's he says shit. Remember how all that shit Harvey said? He says like, we'll go down and get your jacket and don't leave. Like he's got all these little tips and tricks to try and, ensure that you come up, and then he'll come out with the robe on, and say, give me a rub down.
It's nasty. But like you said, the taxi drivers, I mean, he's basically said to him, it's like, here's $20 to drive away from a sex crime. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. But that whole scene is just super creepy.
Richie is a sex pest in this as well. Like the conga dance line. Like, could he have been any further up that woman as he's trying to dance back?
He is very crotch forward, though. I did notice that. I was like, all right, we get it. It's a conga line, but it's like nobody's crotch needs to be that far in front of them. It's just completely unnecessary.
Well, speaking of dancing, I think one of the funny elements of this film is Bernie's physicality with the dancing is really, really funny. And it actually spawned a dance craze, if you don't know. I think in 2011 or maybe it's 2006. I don't have it in my notes here, but there was a dance craze with a rapper coming out with a song called "Move Like Bernie," and it spawned a whole lot of early YouTube videos of people dancing like Bernie, and even some prominent NFL stars in America, when they do their touchdown, actually did the Bernie move a few times. So
see, and the great thing, I feel like there's room for kind of scope for improvement there. Like if I was in the NFL, I score a touchdown, I don't just do the basic Bernie dance. What I do is I lay face down in the first, and for the first, say, 20 seconds, it's all ass. It's just all ass. I'm just doing that little wiggle that he does back and forth as I slowly get to my feet. Already, it's got like 60 seconds in, it's still mostly me just wiggling my back. It's got very weird. The stadium doesn't know how to deal with it.
It does look like Bernie invented the twerk, doesn't it, in that one?
But that's the thing. I feel like he's getting no credit for for popularizing the twerk, like because that move is a TikTok standard. You know what I mean? Like and here we have, back in the day, like I don't even know what a 1993 audience would make of that. They'd go, "Oh, he's shaking his bottom."
Yeah, I think that might be it.
That's why, because we were all listening to Sir Mix-a-Lot going, like, because ass wasn't as massive like as it is. Like now we are in the era of the ass. Okay, this is like 80s was a titties
we
era.
can all agree on that for sure.
Yeah, 80s was titties. So like that's why Sir Mix-a-Lot's song was bigger. It was like, oh look, it's all about butts. but shake it. Look, Bernie's shaking his butt. Because that's, if you look at like what does Richard look at? He's looking at the chick with the long blonde hair and like her big bazungas is what he's looking at. So I feel like I've lost my point.
I think there is that kind of, especially with 80s films, like there's always that totally unnecessary boob scene. Like even in this film, like the scene on the beach when it goes past, it's like, well, yeah, I guess you can make an argument either way. But, it might not narratively be required, shall we say. But they always snuck them in. It's like we always say, it's like Die Hard. Is there a reason for that, that weird sex scene right at the start of the film? I mean, maybe in this film, there's a lot of girls on the beach. But still, if somebody's looked at that script and said, listen, we've got to get some titties out at some point. We just have to. And, fair play to them. They make it work.
Mm. Well, look, I just want to go back to something I said at the beginning and get your guys' ideas, because I honestly think, now, what was struck by, we've slammed the movie, but, Oscar Wilde once said that all bad poetry is sincere. And I think I was wondering if we could get a cultural aside into Weekend at Bernie's 2, and sir, you have achieved it. Congratulations. I think that there is genuine craft in this movie, and they didn't set out to make a bad movie. And I can see some stuff in the script that is quite innovative and clever in and of itself. Like the I think Bernie's voodoo walk or dance is a interesting sort of left field evolution of the first film. I think that Charles and Henry, the other two guys in the movie, Steve James and the other guy, they've been cursed and they're going to turn into, and then they're sort of like a shadow plot. They're kind of two new idiots, like shadowing the main thread of our main idiots. They bring a new flavor. It also, we lose that satire, as you said, Liam, but what we gain is it becomes a treasure hunt. Do you know what I mean? And that's probably why this film is a bit different. But the last thing I'll say is I think that I like the attitude of this movie. I think that, it turns up the heat because, to be frank, the first one isn't Caddyshack. You know what I mean? We've said the first one, there's more, that the first one feels slicker and better and somehow a little bit more on point, but ultimately it's not Ghostbusters or Caddyshack. So we're not trampling over something that, it's not like we're adding a new verse to Hey Jude. Do you know what I mean? So, the attitude of this movie is very different. And that's why I don't care. It's got this sort of Jason X quality, this sort of like bonkers posture that I think they're just going 100%. What do we think?
There's two things to mention, isn't there, in this? The first, and we've already said off air, that if you think of Weekend at Bernie's, if anyone mentions it, a lot of people would probably think of the stuff that happens in number 2, like the music, making him walk and everything like that. And the second thing would be, would you want to watch a sequel that was basically the same as the first one, where they're just carting a dead body, or the fact that now this is completely different, and he's walking on his own with the help of voodoo? It's as you said, left field. It's just totally gone.
Well, what's interesting is in the first movie, their big problem is getting Bernie to move around. How do we get him to move? But in the second movie, the problem is how do we get him to stop moving? He keeps going missing on his own. Like, how do we stop that?
That's great. That's great. An inversion. Well, when you think about it, this movie is an auteur picture, okay? This is Robert Klein, the writer of the first movie. This is written and directed. This is un film de Robert Klein, okay? This is his vision. He's like finally got Kotcheff out of the way. Now I can get down to business. So what you're seeing in this movie is his vision, okay? And it's Bernie twerking on the beach.
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, I disagree with nearly everything you said, but I mean, no, you kind of almost kind of won me over there, because I actually think this film was appallingly bad, like really bad. I found that, as I said, because I was kind of low key falling in love with Andrew McCarthy by the end of the first film, and then to have that ripped away by him just being horrendous in the second film. But I mean, one, they kind of painted themselves into a corner because Bernie very much is dead. And, you know, how do you bring him back again? And they're like, well, it's going to have to be voodoo, I guess. And then, you know,
but that was always we've covered a few other films, Marked for Death, Serpent and Rainbow. The voodoo was on the cards. It was like,
it was absolutely
definitely something you could go to.
The question, when it comes to the voodoo, the question I have is, would the fried chicken have worked?
Yeah.
Like, it's still a chicken, as Steve James said. It's still a chicken. Like, would that have worked?
Maybe.
Well, because the premise of the movie is built upon their idea that they used a pigeon. So they used a pigeon, and that's why they blew it. You know, so if they used the chicken's got to be alive, but he would have done sort of like the different types of kryptonite. He would have done something different. Do you know what I mean? Like if it had been the fried chicken, it would have, I don't know, like he would have been crawling on the ground or something or whatever.
I mean, already you can see how different the conversation is for this film. It's insane how different it is.
We're far from home, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I think he made like a great point earlier. The fact that like I was watching this as a sequel to the first film. And I think that is a mistake because if you do watch it, as you say, almost as like a rat race kind of film, as like a caper, it does work a lot better. You know, if you just kind of abandon any association to the real world, any association with common sense, and it's playing for like broader laughs, I'm like, maybe there is a reason that people have a fondness for this film, despite the fact that it's a bit rubbish.
I suppose we're also talking about you know, where ideas come from and how they change and evolve because, you know, we have the burden of knowledge, as Steven Pinker says, you know, and basically we can't imagine a world without Weekend at Bernie's. So 10 minutes after Weekend at Bernie's came out and people were dressing up as him and putting the sunnies on and doing whatever and talking about it, that's why you've got the cartoon at the beginning of the second one, is because it's 4 years of people talking about this movie and you know, laughing and joking and sneering and, you know, and secretly watching it on cable and whatever. And therefore it sort of builds this life of its own. And then at least the people who were part of one of the main guy, the producer and the writer of the first one, are on this film. Sometimes, you know, we get these ideas change. It's like Ghostbusters. So in Ghostbusters, you know, it's a business film, you know, about how to start a ghost busting business. You know what I mean? And you know, it's very grounded and whatnot. And you know, one of the ghosts they meet is this, you know, terrifying green slime monster. And then cut to the second movie. The slime monster's fucking driving a bus. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then cut to now, and there's a Mrs. Slimer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then there's a cartoon. In the fucking cartoon, Slimer's one of the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I was something we were talking about on a recent podcast as well.
This is a common thing, a common idea that these execs have. They go, oh, well, you know why they love Slimer. You know why they love Slimer. So anyway, Slimer's on the bunny, and no one's in the room to say, okay, do you understand Slimer was just one ghost that like they attacked and he doesn't need to be part of it. No. So anyway, he's one of the Ghostbusters now. He's one of the Ghostbusters. And you say, no, is he? Is he?
Is he really? I think a lot of these, like, they do become a victim of their own success. And we were saying that with when we're doing the Karate Kid podcast, it's like Pat Morita. It's like he's just become this kind of caricature of like wax on, wax off and stuff. And you go back and watch the first film, and you're like, it's actually a really nuanced performance. But because he's become such a cultural phenomenon, by now it's just those kind of like key moments. And you just say, I think it's the same with this film. Yeah, exactly. It's just become
Bart Simpson say the line thing.
Like in popular culture by that point, it's just like, listen, people just want to see Bernie walking around and being dead. And it's just like, well, listen, if we add the voodoo, we can do that for a solid hour and a half. And that's exactly what they do.
Liam, just because I didn't like the Karate Kid on that podcast, you don't have to push it again for other people.
I mean, you're still wrong, and I'm still very upset, but I'll get it.
Let's talk about the investigator, Arthur Hummel.
Oh, I wanted to.
Barry Bostwick.
For the fact that he's a terrible investigator.
and he also loves a good upskirt as well.
Oh, loves it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Just in case you weren't sure how horrendous he is, he's like, I'm going to get a couple of upskirts as well.
Yeah.
But how they didn't know he was on the same bus as them going to
I know. I picked that straight. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my God, how do they not know he's on the bus, you know?
Yeah, it's like he wants to get caught. It's like when he breaks into his house, it's like he goes into the window, which he's sitting next to. Yeah, he's asleep, but he goes right past him. he then shines a light directly into his face as if to say, dude, seriously, I want to get caught. I don't know. And then he uses what can only be described as the loudest camera of all time. His whole performance is better than yourself. And I'm not sure if it's even really needed, but that's the kind of film we're in.
Well, look, you've already mentioned a couple of things. I need to run through quite a lengthy list of Me Too issues from both films. And perhaps you can just jump in when something takes your fancy. So... this is the rap sheet of these movies. And we'll talk about the rating a bit later. But so in the first movie, they start, but this is not really on the Me Too. Well, maybe it is a bit on there, but there's an ADR line in the first movie. I don't know if you guys listen to it on headphones. A guy's walking past in the background on Gwen and Richard's date, and he's talking to what I assume is a woman of the night, and says to her, baby, you're not a woman. Come on, tell me the truth. So there's a little bit of
transphobia.
Well, phobia. He seems to be into it. I don't know.
Right.
I'm just saying there's trans stuff going on. Larry leers at Gwen on the way to the elevators, chuckling and raising eyebrows. This is the very first of the first movie. Larry's just like, because you can't just walk around like staring at people and then when they look at you like funny, just like go like raise your eyebrows like suggestively. Like we don't do that.
No, we don't.
She's a summer intern. They talk about her like that, like she'll be gone in a week, like, it's a hit and run operation, you know what I'm saying? There's an assault in the elevator. I think Larry actually touches her on the shoulder, so that's like, that's not on. Richard engages in quite a lot of gaslighting, blackmailing to get sex, he says, my aunt is very sick. He's saying like, I don't live with my parents died. That's all just to get sex.
Well, Ted Kotcheff makes a cameo as the dad.
Okay, he was great.
Yeah,
maybe I'll lay you up. So Bernie gives money to someone on the Hamptons, and he says, "Buy yourself a girlfriend." Because that's what you do. Women, he also says, booze and women, that's my lifestyle and I love it.
That's fair.
I think that is fair, yeah. I give him a free pass on that one.
When Tawny comes in, possibly the hottest chick in both of these movies, she says, she's kitted out in a bikini, she says, hi, I'm Tawny, and Larry says, hi, I'm horny.
Yeah.
AJ, is that a line that would work? Or
Maybe.
So a guy
only if he's hot though. Only if he's hot.
And he's cashed up.
Yeah.
A guy, one of the disgusting.
What, you mean like you would have to be like cash in hands, like just so you know.
If he's Bernie style, maybe.
Yeah.
One of the disgusting guys at the party says to Gwen, nice outfit. It would look nicer crumpled on my floor in the morning. Okay. You can't laugh at that, okay? It's a sexual crime. Right?
Some charming stuff.
So Bernie, so there's two things here. This will end the first movie. So Bernie has his arm on the couch. A woman sits down and a woman says to him, like laughing off his groping of her behind, Bernie, you animal, you're insatiable. This is one of two incidents, but really the biggest one is that Bernie has sex with Tina. So rape culture is so pervasive that men rape when they're dead. Right?
Yeah. There is no end to our debauchery, apparently. Unbelievable.
Well, literally, yeah. From beyond the grave, you can.
Although in that version, he couldn't say no.
It's true.
Well, I don't know.
I guess. I don't think that's going to fly, that argument, in 2021.
Liam, I believe all women. Okay, so that was the first movie. Now the second movie. You've already mentioned quickly some of the others. So titties popping out on the beach. Now this might be my favorite thing in the world. I think. Like,
the way you said it made me like it even more. I was just titties popping out on the beach. I was like,
my favorite thing in the world is titties popping out on the beach. Like, yeah.
But it does give the film an immediate 8 out of 10. So there's that. Larry the Sex Pest, basically, I have a question about that. What the fuck was the date like? She comes back from the date with Larry. She, like, despises it. What the hell did he do on this date?
Yeah. It's never explained, is it?
Definitely. That was annoying me.
Yeah, we know at this point he's the worst, but you think they would kind of at least give us a hint of him being the worst. It's just like, he goes, I've never seen a scene like it before where they go straight to the end of the date and she's like, all right, you're the worst person. I want you to leave. But then instead of dealing with the date, we just deal with him trying to sexually abuse her afterwards. It's a very strange approach, if truth be told.
Oh, he definitely asked her to pay for the meal, didn't he? Like, he had to.
But I think that makes it worse because you know it's what you don't see, that it's your own imagination that's coming up with the worst stuff.
Yeah, and she seems so reasonable, doesn't she? Like, he goes, and let's be clear, like, right from the off, he's a bit of a slime ball. And when he asks her out on a date, he's surprised that she says yes. So the immediate impression is that she has a pretty high tolerance for sleaze. But one date later, she's like, I cannot deal with this guy. He is the worst. I want to see what happened on that date.
So the last thing I mentioned for this particular movie, get your ideas on the Me Too scale itself. The L. Ron Hubbard C-Sex crew that they assemble at the end of the film puts this in another realm entirely. Because really that is just, like, the movie's pretty much over. And then they just go, anyway, with this $1 million that we've got, here are these nubile women. They're probably not sailors. Let's face it, they're prostitutes.
I don't think they.
Well, they just wanted to be on a boat.
Yeah. They're very, very clearly prostitutes with hats. And that is all they are.
That boat crashed as soon as they left the boat, honestly.
All right. So now these are the charges, gentlemen and ladies. What do we think of this out of 10 on a Me Too scale? Now, we've said that, 0, no case to answer, and 10 is getting serious.
Well, the first film, I think, is a very different beast. I think there are some light shenanigans. Again, maybe some people disagree, but I'm like 4 or 5 maybe for the first film. I think the date scene alone pushes this one up much higher on the scale. and then for the final shot of the film to ostensibly saying, this is the American dream, because that's what this series is really all about, these two films. And at the end of it, they say the guy's finally got the money. So, of course, they get their yacht and their prostitutes, just like any good American would want. Yeah. So, I don't know. Well, I'm not sure if that flies.
The ultimate message is that, you lie, cheat, break the law, steal, defraud, and look what you get at the end of it.
The Donald.
Money and hoes.
That's right.
Boats and hoes.
boats and hoes, don't they?
Well, as a wise man once said, they let you grab them by the pussy.
No, of course.
I believe it was said by the president, 45th president of the United States.
Maybe he was talking about seahorse. I mean, anything goes at sea. It's a very different rule set to the main one,
I think
for sure.
Number 2 definitely pushes the Me Too scale higher. But it's because of Richard, for me.
Wow.
Like you said, he's all about doing business until something happens that he can push himself onto a woman. Like the conga thing, he has to run out of the room when he hears about, look at the titties on that, or the tits, or whatever he said on just everything about like, it's just so lecherous. It is awful with that guy.
Yes. And even at the end, he's going to call the police until the birds come on. Yeah.
Yes,
until he sees the
exactly.
birds.
It's like, okay, until I realize I can hire myself some women with some money that I didn't want to keep anyway. Okay, I'm in.
In some ways, he is worse than Larry.
Because at least Larry is honest with what he is.
Yeah.
But I just out of interest, this is going slightly. But so, what was the deal with him and Claudia? Like, I felt like they were implying at some point that there was going to be some kind of relationship between them, but it just never really materialized.
It was so realistic; they just went their separate ways.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, she spent like half a day with him. It's like, well, I'm kind of glad he's not dead, but Jesus Christ, this guy is the worst.
Was it Gwen from the first film? Where Weekend at Bernie's 2 is set like 2 days later, and they don't even mention the woman that he's having a life with.
So it's actually a series trope. is that you spend time with a woman for the whole movie and then you just don't kick it no more.
So Me Too scale for the second one's pretty high. Are we all agreeing on that?
Yeah.
Well, I think you all are playing this out. I think this movie is so egregious that I've contacted Hermione Granger to give a speech at the UN about what pigs we all are for even watching it. Okay,
So you're giving it 11. Is that what you're giving it?
It's big. I'm just saying it's big, but unfortunately, I had a great time as well. So,
well, as you know, quite often the higher the Me Too scale, the higher the fun.
So,
there's one thing we may disagree on the ultimate score, but we can all agree that sexually questionable scenes are enjoyable.
Your words, you said it.
Yeah, I wondered where you were going with that then, honestly.
I wasn't sure either, to be honest.
No, it was a big pause. It was after you said sexually, and it's just big, pregnant pause.
Yeah, I feel like, you're going down a street and you're fully aware that you're painting yourself into a corner. And it's like, oh man, this could go very wrong for me. And I feel like it did, but yeah, I can assure you, it could have gone a lot worse.
Look, I must say though, I'm watching even the first one, but particularly the second one, it just makes me want to get, these interns at the New York Times and people who work at Penguin Publishing and I just sit them down and put the Clockwork Orange eyeball things on and just say, check out this little movie that I've got for you, and just to show them that how the world, I don't know, could be really if we all wanted it to be. Again.
People ask you, it's like, wait, you're going straight to the sequel? Yeah, don't worry about the first one. It's just going to be Weekend at Bernie's 2.
Hey, they actually wrote a script for Weekend at Bernie's 3 that never got made. Yeah. So it exists out there. Apparently you can read it online. It's out there.
Do you have any idea how they get Bernie back again?
No idea. But I think there's a female body is an addition, maybe. So they go Terminator 3. Is it Terminator 3 where they have the female?
Yeah.
I just love it. Actually, that if you were to make this movie now, that would be the first thing they'd say. Anyway, they get Helen Mirren or something to be the Bernie.
but you couldn't.
And it would be Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig or whatever would be the two. And it would be and everyone would say, "Oh, this is so much better."
No, but there's no way you could do that though. Like to have a guy go up into the bedroom and sleep with a dead Helen Mirren would be...
Why not?
It's a different film for sure.
Yeah.
I can't believe you said Helen Mirren.
Not Helen. Not sweet Helen.
Do you see what the tagline for Weekend at Bernie's 3 was? The corpse awakens. So I think they are bringing Bernie back, apparently.
Oh, shit.
But that is the thing. They have opened the door with this film. I mean, by introducing, voodoo magic, it's like, well, anything goes at this point.
Goodness me. It's, I don't know. Well, I await with bated breath Weekend at Bernie's 3, or the soft reboot, you know, whatever that involves.
Yeah, but are we going to have Andrew McCarthy back? Is he going to be just playing this in his late 50s, but still just being as lecherous and horrible as always?
Andrew McCarthy has to be Bernie at that point.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He should come back as Bernie.
Great shout. That is a good shout.
He's coming back for a paycheck.
But that'd be so nightmarish, though. It'd actually make it quite brilliant. It'd be like 6 Feet Under or something, like how everyone dies. Like it's sort of like, oh yeah, isn't it funny that Larry's dead now? And you say, yeah, but I spent a lot of time with Larry, and I thought he was funny and full of life, and now I've got to hang out with him dead. It's kind of a bit.
The only thing is, it wouldn't you wouldn't even have to do a build up. If you've seen the other films and the film just opens with Larry dead, he's been shot, and you're like, well, yeah, of course he has. Of course
he got shot by all the women he's abused.
Yeah.
Larry. Fuck off, Larry.
Yeah, good line. Great line. Well, any other tidbits from this on either film really to cover?
There was one thing I wanted to mention about this one was in the bank when they got Bernie between them and they got the the Mac, which, why are they selling Macs in a paradise? I don't know. But they managed to find a Mac. And Bernie's signing the paper with his left hand from his right hand.
Yeah.
Yes. I like that. That was good.
He's got two left hands. It's great.
But all the stuff, I think one of the joys of the film is the ingenious ways in which they try and animate Bernie. So, shoelaces tying to his, shoes, or, doing hand puppetry, or ropes and pulleys, all of that.
In the morning on Weekend at Bernie's 1, when he's waving to the passers-by.
Yeah, his limp-wristed wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions is, I was like, by the end of the film, I'm still looking at it. I was like, despite the spear in his head, which again is a whole other question, is why does Larry have a spear gun with him for this endeavor? I have no idea.
I thought about that. I was like, why do they have that? Yeah.
Even like decomposition aside, I mean, he is driven through 4, 5 gates, numerous buildings. He seems in pretty good nick again at the end, He seems to be doing surprisingly well for a guy who at this point has been dead for weeks, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Well, the movie would be so different if they treated him like the apparitions in American Werewolf in London. Like it was like just getting more and more horrendous, and you just go, oh my god! Like the movie only works because it's completely bloodless. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course, yeah.
There's no blood. Like he gets shot, and I don't know how the body works, but there's like literally no blood at all. Like he's sort of just death is just such a lark. It's like, oh yeah, you just playing dead.
Also, Walkman's underwater.
Yeah.
It's not flying. It's not flying. Yeah, and I've got like a special place in my heart for people in films who have really small roles who are so truly terrible that they stand out like a sore thumb. And the security guard who comes out and says, freeze, he has one line, not one line, one word. And somehow it's just the worst delivery I've ever seen. I was like, you could have gone out and got somebody from the street who could have done a better job than that security guard. But no, we're going to stick with this. That was take 20, and that's the best one we've got. It's unreal.
I did love the scale of what they deemed as more offensive for law. Sorry, my words are not coming out right. Like, he was caught shoplifting, the investigator, and he had 4 coppers put him in the car. But when he apparently assaulted women by ripping their bras off, 1 copper.
Yeah.
Fun and games. That's just,
that's how things go on the Virgin Isles.
Yeah. That's just
schemes.
Because it was all agreed by the male crew, the male producer, the male writers that, it was just, carry on Virgin Islands.
Yeah. They weren't even going to arrest him at first. They're like, well, it seems pretty standard, to me. I don't know what the guy's done wrong, if truth be told. But again, it's that whole thing, isn't it? It was like the Arthur story is a bizarre one. Then there's the whole, like you said earlier, the what are they called? The 2 guys, Henry and Charles. I'm still not totally sure if they're required in this movie at all. And I think it's amazing that we've talked about Regan and Bernie's too so much, and we've hardly mentioned how mental the whole voodoo thing is. Like, I know we've used it as an excuse to get him up and about, but I mean, it really is insane. And I don't think it paints the Virgin Isles in the finest of light, shall we say. Because everybody knows about voodoo.
But we've talked about this in some other films. I mentioned them earlier. In fact, one of the guys, not Steve James, but the other guy, he's in Marked for Death, like another voodoo-inspired film. And there was something about the 80s, this with Serpent and the Rainbow, this fascination with this what back then was an exotic culture, and if you buy into, I don't know, like this film is not like Serpent and the Rainbow. So ultimately it's sort of like it's well intended because they're trying to have fun, but the engagement with the culture is they're just using it like in very interchangeably to get so it's sort of indefensible on those grounds in a way. Like you just go, well, you know, I mean,
yeah, you do have to just kind of go with it, don't you? It's like Claudia. They just so happen that he hits on her, and she just happens to be bang into voodoo. And just by chance, her dad, who's a legitimate doctor, is also bang into voodoo. It's like, okay, let's just go with this, I suppose.
Mm.
Yeah, no, it is. Look, so the movie hinges on whether you're into the voodoo dancing or not, and if you're not into it, well, don't watch it. You know, just don't watch it.
What came first, the premise or the voodoo dancing? Are they just
Probably
like,
the
man, wouldn't it
dancing.
be? I think it was the dancing. I think, listen, if we can get Bernie to do the dancing, that I will do anything to make this work. From a narrative perspective, anything to make sure that he's dancing on the beach.
As Ricky said, because they had the Caribbean music in the first one, they doubled down in this one, and they had to find a way to just keep it going. So why not voodoo dancing with the Caribbean music?
But it's an essentializing of the concept. Again, it's they distilled it. They were like, you know, let's go to the Virgin Islands. Like, let's not even bother with the handles. Let's and let's just go the full distance. You know,
I just feel like that's how this film got. Like that's how I would pitch it. I mean, remember earlier I was talking about my NFL dance. Now imagine that in a boardroom. Nobody really knows. It's like, listen, I walk in, there's suits everywhere. I just lay face down on the floor. Like I said, 20, 30 seconds, all ass. Finally get up, do the little dance, look everybody and I say, now imagine that, but I'm dead. Like I'm getting the funding. I'm absolutely getting the funding. That's how these movies get. I assume that's how they get made anyway. Well, either way, so I think we can all agree. Like, I mean, I don't think it's a very good film, but I'm glad it exists.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, because it's always better to have, those conservatism, creative conservatism is a real scourge. And this movie has none of that. And I have to applaud that.
Oh, absolutely.
As we say on our show, usually, it may not be a good film, but a great watch.
Yeah, I had a great time.
That's true, yeah.
Nobody once in the making of this film asked the question, should we be doing this? The answer, it was just nothing but green lights across the board. It's like, yeah, we should absolutely do it. Again, it comes back to that idea. It's like, I hope there was a lot of cocaine involved. I have to assume there was.
There definitely was.
I think at this point in 2021, if you had directed or been involved in this film and they asked you, was there a lot of cocaine involved in this movie? If there wasn't, you would lie and say there was.
Definitely.
Like, oh, yeah. If anything, I mean, like heroin, all sorts is going on.
Good stuff. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Sure. The Weekend at Bernie's saga.
Yeah, as it's known amongst its fans.
Duology is another word that I've heard used.
Really?
Well, let's just hope Weekend at Bernie's 3 comes out sometime.
We can make it.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up our first international collaboration. Thanks so much, guys, for getting together. And I know it's very late over where you guys are. I think it's bedtime for you, but
I think it is, yeah.
The day is just beginning for us.
Yeah, good luck with that. But it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Hopefully we'll get to do this again soon.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay, so that was Weekend and Bernie's 1 and 2. I know usually we have a bunch of other additional sections, video games and all that jazz. We make, I don't think we're going to go into those. We'll just leave it as a unique one-off, our Sideboob Cinema crossover. But I guess before we wrap it up, do we have anything else to cover?
Actually, yeah.
Missing?
No, we really do. This is
I
quite
really
exciting.
thought that was going to be the end of it, in fairness. So yeah, go for it.
No, this is quite exciting. And I realise I'm saying exciting as we're in episode 32, but we have our first actual email off a listener.
First email and only 32 episodes. Is it exciting or is it slightly depressing? I don't know. Well, let's see what the email is.
Well, let's say exciting. Compliments and a recommendation. So it says, it's from Glenn Lash from Florida. And it says, hey, Liam and Wes, I've really been enjoying your podcast. I'm a huge film buff and came of age in the 80s. So these are the movies I grew up with. The first movie that got me to listen was Buckaroo Banzai. You're welcome.
Oh, well, I see you would read this, wouldn't you? Of course it was your pick.
The you're welcome is from me, by the way. You are welcome for Buckaroo Banzai.
Oh, okay.
Not too long ago, because I'm a huge Buckaroo Banzai fan, and I was part of what little targeted marketing they did for that film. I was going to Star Trek conventions back in the 80s. I thought your take on it was accurate, and I have to say that I've been a victim of recommending this movie to people who unfortunately didn't like it. In fact, over the years, I've recommended it to everyone who would listen, and not only the random people not like it, but even those with whom I share a lot of commonalities, i.e. my closest friends, my brother, my wife, my sons as well. None of them seem to like it. So like us, I think Glenn is saying that he's in the minority on this film, but it's a good minority to be in.
It is, but yeah, I mean, again, it's a good email because it kind of gets again to the heart of what the podcast about. Of course, it's all about us just talking about movies we love, but that whole thing about, has the movie held up? And the other question we always ask, would you recommend it? And Buckaroo Banzai is like as much as I enjoyed it, because obviously, ostensibly by making me do the podcast on Buckaroo Banzai, you were recommending it to me because I knew nothing about it going into it, and I did enjoy it. But like you said, we are very much in the minority, and I was fully aware of that when we were watching it. As I was watching, I was like, man, I know I don't even have to ask my wife if she hates this film. I know she does, and I know most of my friends would absolutely despise it. So fair play to him, trying to pass Buckaroo Banzai to others, pass on the torch, as it were, and to his son, his wife. By the sounds of things, pretty much anyone he comes into contact with. But I got to admit, I think it's a bit of a folly, mate. As you said, there's a reason that Buckaroo Banzai might be the most cult movie of all time. It is not for everyone. That's for damn
but
sure.
it's for those special people. Let's just say that.
I'm not sure if that was criticizing us or celebrating us, but
I'm celebrating them. I'm calling myself special. I'm going there.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
So he goes on to say, I was also really pleased this week when you did Highlander, because that's also a favorite of mine, and also, as you know, a weird, very original cult movie. Mm-hmm. Also one that not everyone likes, and that got me thinking about the other movie that I love that's been mostly forgotten and definitely not for everyone, although my brother and wife both agree it's terrific. So I thought I would recommend it for you. And I've never heard of this film, but I have done a little digging on this film, and wow. Have you ever heard of Cat People?
Cat People?
Yes.
Jesus Christ, this guy does like cult movies, doesn't he? Cat People. I mean, I'm literally Googling this right now. What the hell is Cat?
Well, before you Google it, I want to... So he says 1982, starring Nastasia Kinski and Malcolm McDowell, John Hurd, and Annette O'Toole. And it was directed by Paul Schrader, who was a screenwriter, Taxi Driver. He says it has a cool soundtrack.
There's some talent there, isn't there?
He says it's got a cool soundtrack by Giorgio Moroder, plus David Bowie. It's a remake of the 1942 Val Lewton classic, which I also love. If you can appreciate the bonkers premise of Highlander, you'll appreciate this one as well. And I would also like to point out that Black Panther stole the look and setting of his afterlife, Tree of Life, where he goes to visit his dead ancestors from the opening sequence of this movie. I don't want to oversell it or spoil it. If I can somehow get you to watch it, if neither of you have seen it, if you do want to know more, so he's just give us a link to a review. And what I've done is he goes on to finish saying, keep up the great work. So thanks for that email, Glenn. That's really, really...
thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, really nice to hear and really nice to read. So I read up on this film. So basically they're were-panthers.
Yeah, that's you're saying that like it's a thing. Oh yeah, so they're were.
Okay, yeah, but no, they're were-panthers who I mean, I'm dumbing this down a lot, and it'll be a lot more if we ever can find this film, because I haven't been able to find this film in the UK at the moment. But they're were-panthers who, let's just say they're horny a lot. But
the description of this film in this sensual and violent horror tale, I was like, well, straight away I'm on board there. Yeah. And now I hear were-panthers and Malcolm McDowell, of course. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally gonna. Well, if I can find Cat People, I'm absolutely on board. But yeah, I've never heard of it either.
No, so essentially they're horny a lot, but after they do the deed, they have to kill their mate. The only way they can't kill their mate is if incest happens. So brother and sister Malcolm McDowell and Nastasia can get it on. So it's a lot of love.
Wait, right. If they mate with anyone and they want to mate with everyone because they're super horny were-panthers, they have to kill them. But they don't have to kill them if they're fucking their brother or sister. Just to make sure I've got that.
That's the general gist. I mean, I'm probably bastardizing this entire plot, and I do apologize.
Oh, I have no doubt you're bastardizing it. But even if you're, say, 30% correct, that's still absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, Cat People it is, man.
Yeah.
Let's go with that. I'm not sure if we're going to be doing it on episode 33, but I'm certainly perhaps we'll both watch it, we'll love it, and a few episodes down the line we'll be doing Cat People.
We'll have to keep an eye out for that one, because like I said, it's one that I'm ashamed to say I've never heard of, and I haven't been able to find it at the moment for anywhere for us to watch over here. So,
well, as I said, it's a great email. I mean, it's very complimentary, which I love. That's the main thing to take from that, no doubt. But he's introduced both of us to a new film, so totally on board. Awesome.
So last week we said that usually it's your choice for next week's film, but that was taken away from you due to the fact that we were doing Weekend at Bernie's. So I would end the podcast again by saying, what are we doing next week? But once again, it's not your choice next week.
Yeah, amazing. This keeps happening.
Yeah, and the week after, it's going back to my choice. No. So basically, you've actually been able to make it down to Cardiff, because you usually record in Edinburgh. So we're actually going to have since we've been doing this podcast, our first semi face-to-face recording. We're still going to be
semi face-to-face. Like I can look at you enough for the whole podcast.
We're going to be back to back,
much.
or we're going to be plastic
side to side.
Like that. But we're actually with one of our closest friends as well, who we have given the honor of choosing the film. So
the great honor of his life.
We would call him a special guest, but we'll just call him guest.
Yeah, guest is fine. Yeah. I mean, unless somebody is like, oh, Dave's on it. Dave, holy shit, Dave. That is a special guest. I think most people are like, oh, Dave. Yeah, who the fuck is Dave? So we'll go with guest.
So he's actually chosen for us next week. Total Recall.
In fairness, it's a good choice.
Yeah, it is a very good choice, because the three of us as well, growing up being Arnie fans, so the three of us together talking about this film, I think it's going to be an interesting podcast.
Yeah, and I love doing terrible Arnie impressions, and this one, while maybe not the most traditionally quotable in terms of words, I think it's top Arnie sounds. A lot of come on, just totally intelligible, but fun all the same. So
no more than when he's out of oxygen at the end of the film. That's when the eyes popping out and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to forget. This film is absolutely bonkers. So I'm totally looking forward to Total Recall. I'm looking forward to doing this partially face-to-face or whatever crazy plan you've got in mind. But and also, in case you had any doubts as to whether you're going to tune in, Dave will also be there. So this one's going to be a great one, man.
If you're not listening for us, at least listen for Dave.
Yeah, totally listen for Dave. But as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with us on this very special podcast. And please do join us again next week for Total Recall. Oh, yeah. And before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s, or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1 star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't move smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.
Hey, you guys!